Have you ever been erased from your own life without a warning, without a conversation, without even a goodbye tonight? I'm telling you the story of Claire Whitman and what happened the moment she stopped being useful to the people closest to her. Claire Whitman was a restorer by trade, someone who fixed old things for a living and, without realizing it, she had been doing the same in her marriage. That night, she stood in the hallway of the Chicago penthouse she helped build, her keycard pressed flat against the reader. A red light flashed. She tried again. Slower this time, then harder. Nothing changed. Through the glass, the living room was painfully clear. Ethan Whitman, her husband, stood by the counter with a wine glass in his hand. The wine had been saved for a special occasion. Apparently, this counted. Standing close to him was Natalie Whitman, Claire's older sister. Too close. Their laughter landed like a slap. Claire's phone vibrated. A message from Ethan appeared on the screen. You refused to sign. Take some time to cool off. That was it. No discussion, no argument, just a locked door. And here's where it really hit. This wasn't a fight. This was a decision already made. Inside. Natalie brushed past Ethan and reached for the bottle. The gesture was familiar, practiced. Claire noticed it instantly. That hurt more than the locked door. Honestly. Another message followed. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable. Reasonable. That word always came right before something was taken from her. If you're listening right now and this feels uncomfortably familiar, stay with me. And if you've ever been shut out by someone who once promised forever, let us know where you're listening from. You're not alone here. Claire lowered the phone, staring at the red light. So, this is how it ends, she thought. Not with shouting, but with silence and a door that no longer opened. I'm still with you, because what happened next is the part people rarely talk about, the quiet fall after the door slams shut. Claire didn't go far. She drove until the anger burned itself out and pulled into a roadside motel that charged by the night and didn't ask questions. The clerk slid the key across the counter without looking up. Payment first. Claire opened her banking app right there. Her thumb froze. The joint account showed a balance of $0, not low, not pending, 0. Her breath caught. That sound, the one you make when your chest forgets how to work, filled the silence. I remember thinking, this is where most people would panic. She transferred what was left from a private emergency account. The receipt flashed on the screen. $187. That was all she had access to. 5 years of marriage, reduced to a number that wouldn't even cover groceries and gas. In the room, Claire sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her phone like it might explain itself. A message appeared from Ethan. I moved the funds to protect myself. You forced my hand. Protect himself. From his wife. Yeah, let that sink in. Another buzz followed. This one from Natalie. This didn't have to be messy. Messy. As if this were spilled wine. Not a life. Claire locked the phone and pressed it face down on the table. 3 days ago. She still thought she had a marriage. 3 days ago. None of this had happened. That's the part that still gets me. How fast everything disappeared once she stopped cooperating. Let me rewind this for you, because everything that happened at that motel started 3 days earlier, in a quiet conference room where no one raised their voice, and somehow, that made it worse. The lawyer began with formalities, introducing himself as Samuel Roth, the outside counsel handling Henry Whitman's estate. Claire sat on one side of the table. Across from her were Ethan Whitman, her husband, and Natalie Whitman, her older sister. Natalie looked composed, already dressed for something better than a will reading. Samuel cleared his throat and opened the folder. Henry Whitman leaves the jewelry collection and liquid accounts to Natalie Whitman. Natalie's lips curved into a soft smile. That's generous of him. Claire noticed Ethan glance at the bracelets, then at Natalie. Approval passed between them. That moment stuck. It still does. The lawyer turned a page. The residential structure located in Appalachian, Ohio, is bequeathed to Claire Whitman. Silence followed. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a laugh slipping out. That old place, you're kidding. Claire felt her shoulders tighten. It's Grandpa's house. Natalie tilted her head. The one that's basically falling apart. Yeah, that tone. Like value only counts if it shines. Ethan pulled out his phone mid-meeting, fingers moving fast. A minute later, his posture changed. The smile vanished. That land connects to a North Line corridor. His voice dropping. Claire, do you know what that's worth? Claire shook her head. I know what it means to me. Ethan slid a document across the table. This is a temporary authorization. Nothing dramatic. Just lets me handle negotiations. Temporary. That word again. Claire pushed the paper back. I'm not signing anything. Natalie exhaled sharply. You're being emotional. Emotional. Another favorite. Ethan's eyes hardened. You're standing in the way of my job. That's when the room shifted. Not loudly. Just colder. Claire gathered her bag. The house isn't for sale. Ethan watched her stand, his voice low and controlled. You're choosing a wreck over your marriage. And right there, without realizing it, he told her exactly how replaceable she was. I need you to understand who Claire was before that night, because this part explains everything she tolerated. Claire restored old things for a living. Broken chairs, warped tables, houses everyone else gave up on. She believed damage meant history, not failure. That belief followed her home. Ethan liked to joke about it early on. You see potential where most people see trash. Claire always answered with a smile. Someone has to. That someone became her. When Ethan snapped at waiters or dismissed her work as a hobby, she smoothed it over. When he blamed stress for his cruelty, she absorbed it. Every rough edge became another project. I'm saying this plainly because people like Claire don't fall for monsters. They fall for projects. One night, months before the will. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter and let out a tired laugh. You know you're the reason I still function. Right? Claire brushed it off. That's what partners do. And that right there, that line hurt to hear later. I remember thinking, no, that's what caretakers do. The realization finally landed in that motel room, staring at a phone with no money behind it. Claire hadn't been loved for her strength. She'd been used for it. That hit hard. The kind of hard that makes your chest feel hollow instead of loud, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when she stopped trying to fix Ethan. That decision quiet. Internal was the moment everything truly changed. Claire drove through the night and crossed into Appalachian, Ohio just after sunrise. The address led her to a narrow road and a small wooden house that looked like it had been forgotten on purpose. She stepped out of the car and stared at it for a long second. So this is it. Her voice came out quiet, almost careful. I remember thinking how unfair that felt. After everything, this was what she'd been left with. Inside, the place smelled old, not rotten, just tired. The floor creaked under her weight, like it recognized her. A memory slipped out of her before she could stop it. Grandpa used to tell me to step where the boards were strongest. That comment hit harder than it should have. This house had rules. It always had. Her phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit the screen. You really drove all the way out there. His tone carried disbelief. Claire, that place is a liability. She didn't respond right away. She ran her hand along the wall, fingers catching on chipped paint. It's still standing, she replied finally. A sharp exhale came through the speaker. You're being stubborn. That house is worth more torn down than kept. There it was, clear as day. Yeah, that told me everything about how differently they saw value. Natalie chimed in on speaker without warning. We just want what's best for everyone. Everyone. Except Claire. She ended the call without explaining herself. The silence that followed felt heavy but steady. I could almost feel the shift. This wasn't nostalgia pulling her here. This was instinct. Claire set her bag down in the middle of the room and looked around. "Okay," she murmured. "Let's see what you were protecting." And that was the moment the house stopped being a burden and became a boundary. The house was quiet when Claire's phone started buzzing again. Not one alert. Several. Close together. Urgent. She unlocked the screen and froze. The joint savings account showed $0. Not pending. Not processing. Gone. Her shoulders dropped as if something inside her finally gave up holding. "Oh, wow," slipped out under her breath. I felt that one in my stomach. That kind of shock doesn't scream, it sinks. Another notification followed. A transfer confirmation. The full balance, $62,000, moved out under Ethan's authorization. Her phone rang before she could process it. Ethan's name filled the screen. "You pushed me into this." His voice came through calm, rehearsed. "I had to secure my future. Secure. From his wife. Yeah. Let that land." Claire's grip tightened around the phone. "You emptied everything." A pause, then a sigh, like she was being difficult. "You left me no choice." That line again. No choice. It's wild how often control hides behind that phrase. The call ended, but the phone didn't rest. A social media notification popped up next. Ethan at a charity event. Natalie beside him, her hand on his arm. The caption read, "New Beginnings." Claire stared at the screen until it dimmed. A voicemail followed. This time from Ethan, slower, colder. "I'll use the authorization you signed last year if I have to. Don't make this ugly." Authorization, that was the moment it stopped being emotional and became strategic. Claire set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. "I trusted you," she whispered, not to him, but to the room. And standing there, alone in that old house, she finally understood something important. They hadn't just taken her money. They'd declared war. The tablet was buried in a drawer under the stairs, wrapped in an old cloth. Claire recognized it immediately. Henry Whitman had installed a basic security system years ago, the kind that recorded locally because he didn't trust clouds or passwords. She powered it on. The screen flickered, then stabilized. A list of dates appeared. Claire tapped one at random. The image loaded slowly. Then Ethan filled the frame, standing in the living room of the house. Natalie followed a second later, closing the door behind her. Claire's breath caught, "No, not like this," on the screen. Natalie laughed and dropped her purse on the table. "She still thinks this place is sentimental," her voice light, careless. Ethan moved closer, hand resting on Natalie's lower back. "She'll sign eventually." "She always does." That sentence landed like a punch. I actually had to pause here when I first heard it. That kind of certainty is terrifying. Another clip played. Ethan leaned against the counter, lowering his voice. "The timing has to be right. Once the authorization kicks in, the house's leverage." Natalie nodded, fingers tracing his wrist. "And if she doesn't cooperate?" A shrug. "She won't have a choice." Claire shut her eyes for a second. When she opened them, her face looked hollow but steady. I know that look. It's the moment grief turns into clarity. She scrubbed through more footage. Different days. Same closeness. Same tone. The affair wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. Claire set the tablet down slowly. "So that's what this was," she murmured. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, from anger held too long. She crouched near the floor, bracing herself against the wall. Her fingers pressed into a loose board near the base. The wood shifted. She froze. That reaction, that instinct, that's when I knew Henry had prepared for this. Claire pried the board up carefully. Beneath it, metal caught the light. A steel panel, flush with the foundation. Her breathing steadied. "Okay," she whispered. "I see you." I felt the shift right there. Not relief. Not victory. Something quieter. They thought they were ahead. They weren't, and for the first time since the door locked behind her, Claire wasn't reacting anymore. She was taking inventory. Claire worked the panel open with steady hands. No rush. No panic. The steel safe beneath the floor looked intentional, like it had always been part of the house. Inside were neat stacks of cash, banded and labeled. Claire counted once, then again, $210,000. Her breath left slowly. Okay, that changes things. Beneath the money sat a thick folder and a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Claire. She opened it. Henry Whitman's voice lived in the words, calm and direct. He wrote about watching quietly, about seeing how Ethan spoke over her, about noticing how Natalie only showed up when something was at stake. That part stung. Yeah. Grandparents always see more than we think. The letter explained the trust. 34% ownership in Northline properties. Not control, but leverage. Enough voting rights to stop decisions, to slow momentum, to force accountability, protection, not dominance. Henry had planned this carefully. He hadn't tried to punish anyone. He'd built a safety net for the one person who never took shortcuts. Claire closed the letter and reached for her phone. The call connected after 2 rings. Samuel Roth, came the measured voice. Henry's attorney. A man who sounded like nothing surprised him anymore. Claire explained what she had found. The trust, the footage, the authorization Ethan planned to use. A pause followed. Then keys clicking in the background. This won't be instant, Samuel warned. Verification takes time, and once we move, it will get ugly. Claire nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I'm not asking for fast. I'm asking for correct. That line mattered. I actually smiled there. That's growth you can hear. Samuel continued. You have 48 hours before the property deal closes. If they proceed, they expose themselves. Claire ended the call and leaned back against the wall. For the first time in days, her shoulders relaxed. Not because she'd won, because she finally wasn't trapped. There's a lesson here, whether you realize it or not. People who rush to take usually leave fingerprints behind. People who wait tend to inherit the truth. If you've ever been told to hurry up and comply just to keep the peace, take a breath with Claire right now. And if this story is hitting close to home, share where you're listening from. Someone else out there might need to hear they're not crazy. Claire placed the cash back in the safe. Careful, respectful. Thank you, she whispered to the house, to Henry, to the version of herself that finally stopped bending. Upstairs. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan's name flashed across the screen. She didn't answer. Not yet. For the first time, the silence worked in her favor.